Hi, y'all. It's Francis. I want to take a moment to thank each of you for your listener support. It's not possible, obviously, without you or the guests here. But it has been an exciting ride, and I'm so grateful to each guest who has taken the time to talk to me. Your stories and your willingness to be open and honest go so much further than we realize. So, guys, keep sharing, keep healing, keep talking, and remember, it's not always tragic. I will be taking a short time away from the show, but please stick around to listen to the latest episode, and I'll talk to you or see you soon. Have you ever been so impacted by something that it leaves no doubt as to what helped shape you? Well, welcome to The Blind Impact, a podcast where we talk about and uncover those moments. Some funny, some sad, but it's not always tragic. I hope you'll stay for a while. What if today you woke up in someone else's skin? How do you react to the discovery? Do you take it in stride or fear for your life, embrace the possible perks? Take a minute and ask yourself, what would be the worst case scenario for you? Funny enough, this was the case for me. I bet my friend that she wouldn't want to walk a day in my shoes, and I knew for certain I did not want to ever walk in hers. You see, she had been raised by a dad that didn't care and a mother who was schizophrenic but undiagnosed at the time. So there would be days that my friend would come to school and her hair not be washed and her teeth sometimes brushed and her clothes would be terribly wrinkled and most often too small for her. She would on occasion wear shoes that weren't big enough to fit her, or she would arrive to school with no shoes at all. My family was nothing to speak of, except my dad was a judge, and our mom had come from a long line of prosecutors, and her family owned a law firm, but that wasn't what we had to be proud of. It was public knowledge that my grandpa, times three, had founded the town we lived in. I obviously didn't know him, but he apparently was quote-unquote something. He got the town developed the way he saw it, and no one ever since had anything to say about the laws in the town. And that was expected from each and every citizen. They just did. Everyone lived there in harmony, and every neighbor did for every neighbor what they could when needed. But when it came to my family and that great grandpa times three of mine, we weren't kind people. We lived in a huge house on the hill, or I should say, lived in a huge house on the hill that was pretty much surrounded by a moat. Nobody had access to the house except for his wife and the gardener and, on appointment, the cook. But he was known to be pretty mean. Down the line, my family straightened out, though. We got to keep the money my great-grandpa times three generated for us. He always wanted his family to be known and for pretty much anything, and of course, wealthy. But they were wealthy and still are, and the only ones who poorly represented a family name were really done away with. And my great-grandpa times three would have had the same thing done to him had he not been the patriarch. More than anything, the founder of the city. So I shouldn't need to elaborate any further on the type of man he was. I think I've painted that picture well enough. So I'll fast forward many years, and here it is that the aforementioned friend and I are very much still friends, removed from the great-grandpa times three's reign. So that leaves me and Sadie. As I said, Sadie's life was not one I'd like to have, and my family wasn't so great, but the circumstances were. So many times my parents would have me invite Sadie over for dinner. Our mom often made lunches for my siblings, myself, and Sadie. Sadie appreciated what we did for her, and she even wanted to live with us if she could. So here we are. Sadie and I are now swapped. I am Sadie, and Sadie is me, and she lives in my home with my family, and I stay at hers with her inattentive parents and the one loaf of half-molded bread in the pantry. The bugs are all jockeying for position and possession of the bread inside its bag. The one overhead kitchen light buzzes frantically to keep itself alive in a place where even the light knew there was no chance. I watched from afar as Sadie's dad sat alone at the dinner table with a single chair accompanying it because the others had been broken. There's a whiskey bottle held to his lips, and he takes a sip and lets the bottle fall with his hand towards the ground. The hand and bottle just dangled there amongst the sea of random broken chair legs and various chair pieces below. Her dad looks off into the distance, and he has a sudden thought. He quickly stands up from the lonely chair, bottle in hand, storms off in a rage in the one-bedroom apartment. Suddenly there are screams and sounds of glass breaking, endless crying and screams of no and please carry on for an immeasurable amount of time. Dad, quote unquote, reemerges from behind that door, with blood on his shirt this time and the bottle still hanging on tight. He goes to the fridge, staggering, and leans in looking for only what I could imagine were hopes and dreams. But because there most certainly was nothing else to eat from there, edible anyway, he slams the refrigerator door shut so hard the green transistor radio on top fell off and broke. Something else he would be angry about. He sits and contemplates storming off again, but this time he does something different. He calls out, "Sadie, Sadie, you hear me calling you, girl? You better get your butt in here, or boy, you're gonna get it. You hear me?" He yells as loudly as he can, except Sadie is not there, so she couldn't possibly hear him. She's at my house now, enjoying a nice meal and a sweet tea, I would imagine, laughing with her head back and mouth open so wide because of some joke my dad told and only she, or me, could find funny. She's reaching for the last homemade yeast roll for Mama's family recipe. I hide and peek from around the corner as quote-unquote Dad's footsteps advance in my direction. I'm afraid and think of running as fast as I could, but I don't. He stands from his chair and walks angrily towards Sadie's room. He doesn't knock. He can't. He just walks right in. He's screaming for Sadie, and there's still no answer. There can't be. He sits on her bed and grabbed one of her teddy bears from when she was about 6 or 7. It was her favorite bear. She never went to bed without it. She named him Rubik's. I guess because her life was so complicated, and maybe she felt like he could help solve some of her sadness. He was there for her. Boy, I know Sadie is having the time of her life, sitting in my sturdy chair at the table with my family, enjoying a dessert by now. She must be. We never had dinner without dessert, although my dad didn't always approve of that. He and Mom discussed it usually, and they would agree to let us have it. They would let us know that it wasn't something that we should get used to, that it was not mandatory that we have a dessert every night after dinner. We should be appreciative of the food that we have and not waste it, and dessert was a treat, not a necessity to live. Sadie and I are both 9, and she's a few months older than I am, but I act older than she does, so I just say that I'm the oldest. And quote-unquote Dad is still sitting on Sadie's bed. He walks around the room that she shares with her 2 sisters and brother. But this room isn't really a room. It's more of a living area enclosed by sheets and blankets hanging from the ceiling. For privacy, I guess. But there he sat, crying. But I knew that things were bad at home for Sadie. I just didn't know how bad. I don't know why Sadie's mom doesn't come from her room. Doesn't she know that her daughter is missing? Why can't she be like my mom? Sadie, I am so sorry. Daddy doesn't know what he was thinking. I said I was going to stop drinking, just until I could make a better home for you and your mama and your siblings. I need to do that. I'm going to do that. It's just hard. Sadie's dad sat there and cried and drank and became angry. Then he talked some more, seeing how Sadie had to live. I can only think about how I am so glad she and I got to switch lives, even if it was only for a moment. You see, this was my dream, and it was one I dreamed every night since Sadie's murder. Sadie had been washing dishes, and her dad didn't like the way a few dishes were clean, so he ended up hitting her so hard in a drunken rage that she fell back and hit her head, causing immediate head trauma. And he was sorry now, but I wasn't. I'm glad that Sadie got to sit at my family's table experiencing my life. For once, laughing and smiling and not having to worry about the next meal or bed. The life, joy, and love that surrounded that house and table. Even if just a dream, I'm glad she got a big glass of sweet tea and the last yeast roll. But more than that, I'm glad that she got to experience love. That must be what heaven is like. Well, in my kid mind anyway. Well, guys, the piece you just heard was written by me. It is a fictional piece, and if you're interested, you can find more writings over at the website, theblindImpact.com. And once again, I so much appreciate your support. I hope that you enjoyed this piece, and I hope that you are enjoying the show, and I hope that you continue to enjoy the show. So thank you once again for your support. It has been absolutely amazing. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of The Blind Impact. If you like the show, please rate, subscribe, review, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have a story you'd like to tell, please email me at theblindImpact@gmail.com. Or if you have a story you'd like to have read here by me, please include those details in the email or the voice message. Thank y'all, and remember, it's not always tragic.